50,000 Strzok page text messages and contacts between them. And what we now have emerging with this week with the media leak strategy, it's now all the house of cards is beginning to tumble. And there's every indication now that this has crept into Bob Mueller's office himself, now that there's irrefutable and incontrovertible evidence that it's the highest ranking members of the FBI and DOJ that are involved in nefarious activities and abuse of power to prevent one person from becoming president and help another person become president, and then also destroy the president that won, that was duly elected by the people. Now all of a sudden it seems like they want to clean this mess up and get out as quickly as they can. It's not going to be that easy, especially now that we know a grand jury has been impaneled and that they're looking into Andrew McCabe, Deputy FBI Director. And we're also being told that they're looking into a lot of other information that could be equally damning. We had Joe DeGeneva on Hannity last night. We'll talk about this with Carter Page later today. But he explained that these Strzok page texts that we've been putting out all week, that there is, in fact, an illegal and criminal strategy to release information related to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the FISA warrants, to surveil Trump campaign associate Carter Page. And he rightly points out the leaks are a criminal offense. By mentioning Carter Page by name, Strzok and Page created a massive civil liability, not only for themselves and many FBI officials, including Jim Comey, told them that he had the right to remain silent at the time. He didn't listen to me. And Andrew McCabe and former FBI General Counsel James Baker, and they're all going to go down on what this FISA abuse is about. It's now the evidence is overwhelming and a grand jury is impaneled. Now, the media, one day they're going to have to play catch up, and they're never going to get there because they can't help themselves. What happened with Paul Manafort today is even more fascinating, which I'll get to. But I got to tell you, with everything that we learned, their media leak strategy, their leaks that we know they put out there, the people involved in the leak, this is all Obama's top FBI, DOJ, DNI, and CIA officials involved in all of this. This is what it comes down to. We now have all the evidence we need that they had rigged an investigation to favor the candidate that they say publicly and privately that they loved, Hillary Clinton. The evidence in that case was overwhelming and incontrovertible, that she violated the Espionage Act, that she obstructed justice. These are things we have repeated for quite a long period of time. That's all true. This all happened. It happened because they hated Trump and they favored her. Her campaign was allowed to continue. The campaign continues, and I guess they feel above the law when it comes to pretty much everything, because then they're funneling money, a campaign finance violation, through a law firm, so it shows up as a legal expense that hires an op research group that hires a foreign national, Christopher Steele. Christopher Steele puts Russian lies together, Russian propaganda together. And then what they do with this information is pretty disgusting. If you look at the heart of it all, you've got it being leaked pretty much by everybody that matters, that has power, that is involved in all of this. I mean, when you think of, you have the director of national intelligence. He's leaking some of this information. You have the CIA director. He's handing it over to Harry Reid himself. So that information can be sent to James Comey. That's all orchestrated, planned. It's part of their strategy. Then you have the leaks of Strzok and Page, etc., on all of this. On top of that, we find out that the information in the phony dossier that's leaked to the American people, to me, that's the worst part, because they're disseminating false information with the purpose of influencing the American people in the lead up to an election. Of course, Peter Strzok referred to us as smelly Walmart people. He can smell us. And that information, those paid for Russian lies, they were never verified, never corroborated. They were presented to FISA court judges. Well, you can't present unverified, uncorroborated information for a judge. Rod Rosenstein recognizes that himself. And on top of that, and you have the other instances of abuse, then you omit specific information that is relevant, especially to obtain a difficult FISA warrant. You have to tell the judge everything you know. And if you know that Hillary Clinton paid for it all, it's a political document bought and paid for by a political research. Well, you need to tell that too. And they didn't, repeatedly did not. And then, of course, Donald Trump wins. They first tried to stop him from winning. And it's interesting, if you look at the whole group of people we have here, McCabe and Comey, Strzok and Page, Sally Yates over at DOJ. If you look at Bruce Orr, his wife Nellie working for Fusion GPS, his relationship with Christopher Steele, it gets really dicey because Christopher Steele is sending to his BFF, Bruce Orr, all the information that he himself doesn't stand by. Remember, in Great Britain, under the threat of perjury, Christopher Steele wouldn't stand behind his own phony Russian dossier. He said maybe 50-50. It's raw intelligence. I have no idea because he didn't want to be put in jail for perjury. But he's still trying to feed that information and other information using a conduit that's been set up for him, Bruce Orr, who he met many times, who handwritten notes exist about, and text messages exist, and all this other evidence exists, 70-plus contacts, and he's trying to get Bruce Orr to give information, that's Christopher Steele, to special counsel Robert Mueller and his contacts. The contact we believe to be Andrew Weissman, who works in the office, who is beyond ethically challenged. So now all of this stinks to high heaven. All of this shows a massive abuse of power, political scandal, the likes of which this country has never seen before. And it's now all getting exposed. Now we have a grand jury set up. And we're told, my sources are telling me, that they're looking into a lot more than Andrew McCabe and Andrew McCabe's lying. And that every person that signed off on that fake fraudulent FISA warrant is going to have to answer questions. And so what we see happening, I think, very quickly here, I don't think, it's interesting we don't hear so much about the subpoenaing of the president anymore by the special counsel's office. And we don't hear a whole lot at this particular time about, well, we're not going to have the Paul Manafort trial number 2. That was resolved today. And when you get into the intricacies of that, then you're beginning to see that maybe the good people of law enforcement now have taken charge. Because you got in this Manafort indictment, this new indictment that was put out a few hours ago, well, you also see people implicated, like Tony Podesta. John Podesta's brother, the Clinton-connected super lobbyist. Anyway, Tony Podesta knew he was working with Paul Manafort on behalf of a Ukrainian politician, according to an indictment released earlier today. Podesta, Manafort, Mercury Public Affairs all failed to register as foreign agents of Ukraine for the work. Manafort today enters a plea agreement with the special counsel. He agrees to cooperate. And after making a series of phone calls, I got 3 people corroborating that it had nothing to do with Trump, Russia, or collusion. So you got 2 lobbying firms, one owned by the Democrat super lobbyist, friend of the Clintons, Tony Podesta, knowingly working with Manafort at the direction of the Ukrainian government, according to an indictment released today. And the indictment was released ahead of the plea of Manafort. So all this now is coming to, they're beginning to land the airplane, if you will, part of a lobbying scheme that Manafort solicited 2 lobbying firms to lobby on behalf of then Ukrainian president. Various employees of companies A and B, it says, understood that they were receiving direction from Manafort as it relates to this particular presidential candidate, which was not operational when companies A and B began lobbying for Ukraine. What they're basically saying in that indictment is that, everybody else committed crimes too. So I don't know how this all ends, but it seems like it's going to come to a much quicker end than I thought it would. Because at this point, how do you justify what has taken place at the highest levels of the FBI, the DOJ, the Director of National Intelligence's office, and, of course, leaking like mad, Brennan CIA, all under the banner of Barack Hussein Obama's government in the lead up to an election? And what other people might be involved ultimately in all this? Loretta Lynch, Susan Rice, Ben Rhodes, Samantha Powers. Are we going to ever find out why they were unmasking 300-plus people in an election year, a 350% increase? Are we going to get to the bottom of who helped rig the investigation into Hillary? Are we going to ask who knew what, when, and where as it relates to the phony dossier that was put together? Are we going to ask who's responsible for making the decision to repeatedly lie to FISA court judges, withhold specific important information to obtain a warrant on an opposition party candidate in the lead up to a presidential election? Are we ever going to get to the bottom of how this corrupt band of people got put together? Are people going to be held responsible for their leaking? We've been right. What has the media been talking about? Russia, 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 and anything but. And now it's coming to a crashing halt faster than even I thought it would. How it ends, I don't know how this ends. If there's justice, there will be equal justice under the law, equal application of our laws. If there's not, and they try to cover it up, well, that's when we need another special counsel then to get the job done.